This is Hassan Clay with the Get Made podcast. Of course, Get Made is an acronym for Manhood, Accountability, Development, and Enrichment. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in today. Last week was a great podcast. I got a lot of great comments from you guys, brothers and sisters out there who tuned in and gave me some suggestions. Some people hit me in my inbox. Some people I actually saw out in the street out here in the world, and we had some conversations about this podcast, about this episode, and it was great, and I really appreciate it. And so, of course, you can catch me streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. And also, I have a new page that I'm setting up for TikTok and Instagram, is the Hassan Clay Experience. So check me out. Please share, and let's jump into this podcast. So again, from last week, I want to kind of continue a conversation from last week. I think it's important. About female masculinity. And also in that podcast, I actually talked about something else, hyper masculine energy and super feminine energy, right? And this is some of the things that men kind of portray in our relationships. And again, one of the things I want to also put out there in this space, there was a comment that was made about somebody being a real man. And I wanted to correct the person who actually put that on there. Every man is real, like every woman is real. Now, we may have some undeveloped men and women. I know myself, I was undeveloped. I wasn't quite at my potential, and I probably still haven't met my full potential in being a man, right? But the idea is to have a compelling vision, trying to move in that direction and trying to set yourself up to be the best person that you can possibly be. And this is why this podcast, or the setup of this podcast, is important. In my opinion, this is why it's important, because we just want to try to get people on a better path. We want people to kind of, hey, let's look at ourselves a little differently. We have a lot of traditional values that are not really good for today, right? We have a lot of things that we're trying to promote, we're trying to push, that's kind of archaic. And let's just keep this 100. We're not going back to the Stone Ages. I'm going to call it that. We got some new dynamics. And for anybody who in the spiritual realm, being a Muslim, being a Christian, or whatever, there are some adjustments. There's not a new twist to the religion itself, but there's room for some adjustments in how we are looking at ourselves in this day and age. Doesn't mean that the basic fundamentals of things change, but nevertheless, our values change, but nevertheless, we want to make sure that we are current, that we are trying to get beyond the social constructs that has been placed upon us, the way that we are looking at things. And so here we go. So hypermasculinity, right? A lot of times this can be seen as overly aggressive, a person who's overly assertive, and we're talking about a man, and how he is dealing with society, especially with his woman. And we look at the super feminine energy that men portray, because one thing about it, there's men out there who are very feminine in the way they move, right? Not saying that they're women, not saying they're gay, not saying anything else. It's just a construct that has been placed out here. Now, in my opinion, just keeping this 100, there was this thing, especially for Black men, seeing Black men in dresses. And we see these in our comedians and some actors out there, some people like Tyler Perry, Ricky Smiley, Martin Lawrence, Eddie Murphy, and even back in the day, comedian by the name of Flip Wilson, right? They used to have this thing that they dressed up in women's clothing and then portray themselves as women. And what it made it kind of acceptable, because the only thing people do was laugh at it. and have fun with it and talk about it and encourage it. And so in that, there's been a problem because there has been this dumbing down of men. When I say dumb down, there's been a weakening of men. And what has happened is when we start portraying a lot of this super feminine energy, we start doing things like over defending our position or defending ourselves, because a lot of times it seems like they're coming for it. And when we start defending it, more likely we're being very argumentative. We're not just stating our position, giving our facts to our position, and then asking somebody to do something with what it is that we're asking for, the boundary that we are setting. We're asking a person, hey, look, I need you to respect this boundary. Now, if you can't respect the boundary, tell me what it is that you can do, right? It might be a little too much for a woman in certain instances, might be a little bit too far. And okay, we want her to be able to express herself and do what it is, because we just need to change. We're not looking for a lot of men are pretty simple when it comes to what we're looking for. We're not looking for a lot. We're not asking you to jump to the moon. We're not asking you to dig a hole to China. We're just asking you to do simple things, right? So in that, what we do, we start defending, then we start making all these excuses of why we're defending, or why is this, and why is that. And we do a lot of making excuses, and then we start explaining, over-explaining. And this is when the problem really started taking place, because we start talking too much, right? And then we start becoming ultra sensitive in our explanation. We start having these feelings and all these deep feelings that then comes off, and it allow us to actually look weak in a situation. And when I say weak, well, I'm not talking about a person, some type of chump, some type of punk or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. We ain't even going there on this. But when I'm saying weak, is that we lose leverage, right? And I want us to really understand this word leverage, right? We give over position, because what started happening, we start reacting. And when that reaction started taking place, what we're doing then is that's when the hypermasculinity start coming in, and we start trying to outman a woman, which is, all right, this is, makes no damn sense to me, right? Why are you trying to outman somebody who's not a man, right? But that's kind of the conditioning that we have gotten in our society, especially with the community. Now we have conspiracy in a sense. I don't want to promote a lot of conspiracy theories, but there's a conspiracy to really shake up our dynamics within the Black household. One of the things that really take place is there is a flip of the economic structure in many of our Black households. A lot of our Black women are really raising, are head of households. They're raising children on their own, or they're not with the fathers of their children for whatever reason that might be. They start getting a little hectic. They start trying to be a little bit more assertive. And this is when you start talking about this masculine energy that women portray. Because one of the things that really take place is that they become a little bit more assertive because they have to. We talked about this last week. They become a little bit more assertive, and then they become a little bit more independent. The independence come not because they really probably want to be independent. It's because they've been put in roles that have to be independent, right? So there is this shakeup of what looks like interdependency, right, between a man and a woman. She's a little bit more assertive. She's been out here on her own. She's been her bills. She's been doing whatever. And there is this system that really would kind of give her the upper hand over a Black man, right? So in this regards, we have to really look at how the genie is really out the bottle at this point. And probably the genie is not going to go in the bottle. We then have to come up and develop ourselves in a way that then we can kind of assert ourselves, right? Be assertive without appearing aggressive. Because when we start talking about this hyper masculinity and we start talking this reaction to this hyper masculinity. What really kind of takes place when a man starts trying to outman a woman, his chest start getting broad, his nose start flaring, all these things. He gets his voice start raised, and he start looking like he's angry. He's getting very aggressive. And what happens for many women that they get scared, because then it looks like they don't have physical safety, right? And so in this physical safety, obviously they're going to want to kind of protect themselves. They want to kind of do things that put them in a position of safety. But then the dynamics change and we lose leverage, because at that point, we don't look like a good place to be. We don't look like a safe place to be. And so we have to now start looking at how we can do something a little different. And what can we do a little different, right? I want to get into that real quick. And some of the things that I've tried to make sure that I do, some of the people that I coach and I counsel, I try to make sure that they have an understanding about doing. And if you need some of this type of information, you actually can contact me and we can kind of see how we can make it work out for you. But one of the things I often try to make sure that people understand, first and foremost, before you make any moves, ponder and reflect on what's going on. Gain information. You know, is a scholar who was once known as saying that knowledge precedes speech and action, right? So in that, we have to know something. The only way you gain knowledge is by gathering it. You have to get it. You have to start trying to obtain it. That means you got to slow up and you have to kind of find out what's going on, right? And let's talk about this in case of a man and his woman. Let's say she might be acting out and she's doing not of his value. You got to establish your values, but your values need to be clear. But she doesn't understand and she may be kind of going in. Now, first, let's find out. You need to find out what it is that got her in this state. What has taken place for you to kind of be snapping like this? First and foremost. Now, that's not something that we generally do. Somebody starts snapping, we snap back, right? And then that's how the confusion started. That's how all the kind of nonsense started, because we jump right in the ring with it, when our position really is to let me see what's going on with this woman right here. And we start asking questions. Okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. How'd you get there? What got you there? And she may tell you what got you there. And you can say, well, you know, that's not really what I was trying. Okay, I see you got an experience and you acted upon what you believe is your experience. So I can give you that. Now, I just want to be clear with you. That's not where I'm coming from. That's not what I'm trying to say, or that's not what I mean. And let me give you the clarity about that, right? So when you do that, you actually start grabbing the range. You start seeing like, hey, maybe he is now emotionally stable to kind of deal with me, because that's what we're talking about when we start talking about this hyper masculine energy and the super feminine energy that comes in, that you're not handling your emotions well. You are kind of just you're gauging in impulse activity. You're not regulating yourself, and that means that you're not stable. And so at that point, many women, I ain't gonna say all probably, but many women look for stability. They look for, of course, financial stability. You know, money comes and goes, right? But they definitely looking like they want to make sure that you are emotionally stable to deal with me, to handle my stuff, right? And so many men, I'm just gonna be honest with you, you look like you need to kind of be a therapist your damn self, right? And now I'm not telling you to start trying to evaluate no damn body or nothing like that, but I am saying that you have to take your time to really find out what's really happening with her, and then come up with a plan. You have to kind of, because men are fixers, really, by nature. Men are fixers. So you have to come up with a plan. But then you have to make sure that that plan is going to be doable. That's the point where we kind of miss it. because we think, well, you can do it if I tell you to do it. No, she may not have the capacity to do it, and it may not be her style. She may need to be able to do it another way. And you have to kind of figure out which way she's able to do a particular thing to give you what it is that you need in order for you to be stable, right? You're not going to be stable when you're jumping out there, you're beating your chest, you're flaring your nose, you're getting all aggressive, you're standing over and you're yelling, you're doing all these type of things here. You're not going to show stability that way. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've been down that road. I've been there. I've done it. I've caught myself trying to make sure that, you know, my woman is following, my wife is following me the way I want her to follow. I'm going to, you know, try to say things or assert myself, and it got me nowhere, right? It got me nowhere. It got me more arguments than anything else. And then even I started exhibiting more of these super feminine energies to take place. And I had to pull myself back because at that point, it's very stressful. It get on your nerves, your mind 30 different ways and all that. That's because you're not centered. You're not in control of you, right? You're not managing you. And then you're trying to manage somebody else when you're not even managing you, right? So when we start looking at how we pondering and reflecting, we gathering information, we're trying to make sure we synthesize this information so we can come up with a plan. Then we find if the plan is doable or not. If it's not doable, then we try to figure out what can take place in order for it to be doable, right? So I want all my brothers to know that when we start looking at this, this is us taking accountability, right? We're taking accountability for the situation. We're managing the situation. Then we developing ourselves, right, in order to handle the situation, right? We're getting the necessary tools in order to be able to maintain and implement and then even maintain our situations, right? This is when we start really exuding manhood to its fullest, right? This is when we start developing ourselves to the fullest. Now, that don't mean that everybody's going to cooperate. And when they're not cooperating, maybe you might need to make some other decisions about who you're dealing with, right? But that's for another subject and another time. And so with that, I'm going to close this podcast out for this week. Appreciate everyone coming in. All you have shown up. Please share. Please let everyone know about our podcast. I'm so happy to be of service to my communities and to my brothers. Again, this is all about adjusting the crown for my brothers because you're still kings. You know you're a king. You need to act like a king. And this is how we're going to do it. So until then, you guys take care and God bless. Again, make sure that you share, make sure you comment, and we see you next week.